founders of Concerned Citizens of South Central Los Angeles and one of the leaders in the environmental justice movement. And her sons, her children, continued to provide leadership to Concerned Citizens after her death. And sadly, her son, about a year ago, died. He's planning to run for the city council. He died of cancer. So but the struggle goes on. Concerned Citizens is there, and we continue to fight on the line with them. You asked about Chi Moon. He was a Chinatown activist and also worked for state senator when we started the struggle to stop the warehouses in favor of creating what is now LA State Historic Park. He was absolutely essential in that struggle. The first time I met with the people responsible for making it happen, the three people were Chi, Louis McAdams from Friends of Los Angeles River, FOLAR, and Arthur Golding, a landscape architect and an architect, who had a conceptual plan for the park at the cornfield. We had lunch at a restaurant in Chinatown, and then she drove me around the site, and that's what led me to say we're going to get involved in this. And we worked with Doug Carson's an environmental lawyer, and a few days later filed the first letter. Doug raised the environmental arguments, we raised the civil rights arguments, and the rest is history. That's what led to the park. And she was later elected to the city council and mayor of, I believe it's Monterey Park. And sadly, he also died of cancer. It's like the song says, the good they die young. But without Chi, there would be no LA State Historic Park at the cornfield. And on our wall outside, we have a picture of the commemorative envelope issued in his honor. We went there with Congressman Adam Schiff. So he is a local hero, an everyday hero. You are absolutely right to commemorate them.
Do you know if there are archival materials or records relating to Chi Mui and Juanita Tate? I'm a historian, so I'm always about, how do we preserve the evidence? How do we make sure that future generations know what these contributions have been, that they are able to build on them?
That's a great question. As I mentioned earlier, Judy Baca and the Great Wall of LA. The wall tells the story of the history of LA from the perspective of people of color and ethnic groups from prehistoric times through the 1984 Olympics. And that's on one side of the river. She is now planning a mural on the other side of the river to take the history of LA from '84 to the present. And so I've been actively advocating that she tell the story of the cornfield and de Los Angeles State Park and Baldwin Hills Park as part of that, because it is has become an essential part of the history of LA, and commemorating Juanita and Chi there would certainly be part of that. First of all. Second, I can get you the site. There was a book, I think it's called Black LA, published about 2 or 3 years ago now, with a chapter about concerned citizens. And the professor at UCLA is writing a history of the environmental justice movement in LA and the black environmental justice movement in LA. So I assume, I hope, she has archival materials about Juanita. Some of our files on the cornfield and Trio and Baldwin Hills, we think will themselves become archival materials. Now most of it is digitized, so it's easier to preserve.
Mhm.
But I think that the single best lead would be the professor at UCLA who wrote that chapter for Concerned Citizens on Limited Tape. For Chimui, again, that's an excellent question. You're the first person that's brought that up. There is, fortunately now, a Chinese-American museum in El Pueblo de Los Angeles, and I would like to think they've thought about this. I just haven't talked to them about it. But by all means, I will send you leads about this, because it's absolute. You're absolutely right. These histories, as I said earlier, left to its own devices, the city of LA would commemorate the 1,000 cultural monuments about the mainstream culture and disregard people of color and low-income people. And so it requires historians like you who understand that the history of the people and not just the elites is of absolute vital importance.
Yeah. Even given our name as sort of a local connection, Anacostia Community Museum, we're really about community development and identity worldwide. Even if it's a matter of preserving records through our resources, which are national and federal, and for the public trust, we'd be more than happy to be able to facilitate some of that if it's necessary.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
You know, we've thought about this ourselves. We just don't have the resources.
Yeah.
For example, the Baldwin Hills litigation, the administrative record there was some 40,000 pages, and we work with a private law firm, so we have the entire administrative record electronically. And I thought, well, like WikiLeaks, we just publish it on the web. But the technology of actually getting it posted in a way that's accessible and so on, that's where the question of the resources comes in.
Yeah.
So we haven't done it yet, but we have all the information. And similarly for the history of the struggle to create the cornfield and so on. I used to be an attorney with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and LDF's archives go back to the 30s through the present. And I know they have concerns about attorney-client privilege because so much of it was litigation, but there have been efforts to for academics to get access to LDF archives for a number of years. We used to be a part of the Center for Law and the Public Interest, and then they closed in 2006. We spun off as an independent project, but those records, there's been interest from UCLA or USC in acquiring those records as well.
Yeah, it's so long as someone has them and can provide public access. That's one of that's always an issue.
Absolutely, but you cannot assume that that's taking place.
Yeah.
Indeed, you know, Watts Towers. There are efforts now to preserve Watts Towers. About 2 or 3 years ago, Bud Goldstone was the aeronautics engineer who, in the late 50s, I think, the city of LA had actually condemned Watts Towers.
Yeah, that's right.
And there was a red condemnation tag, and they were going to tear them down. And somebody told him about it, and he went and looked, and he devised an engineering test to demonstrate that those towers were not coming down. And he actually, you know, hooked up a huge truck to try and move the towers, and the truck got picked up off the ground because of the strength of the towers. And the city officials there took the condemned tag off the towers and gave them to Bud. And about 3 years ago, he contacted us because of our long-standing interest in cultural monuments that reflect the history of people of color. And he was quite blunt. He said, I'm dying. If you don't capture my story, it's going to die with me. And so we produced a videotape and just interviewed him on camera, posted it on the web, and UCLA, by coincidence, did an international conference on Watts Towers, and they asked us, we premiered it at that international conference, and that video is now part of the archives at UCLA, and Los Angeles County Museum of Art is now working on preserving Watts Towers. So one hopes that all those records, including the records of litigation to preserve Watts Towers, are being preserved, but one can never be sure.
There's so much work to be done, and groups such as organizations, nonprofits such as City Project, and your individual heart and soul and work. People are so involved in doing the work that sometimes the documentation goes by the by,
right.
And years later, people say, "Well, what happened? Where's the evidence?" So that we can continue to tell the story,
Absolutely.
and future generations can draw on that energy, and it's poofed, it's gone.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that we just encourage Folk Corp, even while you're doing the work, have a dedicated person to sort of document and keep up. So even if it's in boxes, at least it's there. Even if it's on videotape or digitized in some fashion, it can be retrieved, and not just academics, but public citizens.
We agree.
Can access the material and use it to continue the fight. And so this is just an encouragement.
Thank you.
To document. And,
we agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and then if there's some ways in which we can help facilitate the archiving of that material, we'd certainly be more than willing to help.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah.
No, we think the Latino Museum at the Smithsonian in D.C. We think that's wonderful. As I mentioned, there's now the Chinese American Museum in El Pueblo. There's the Japanese American National Museum in what is still Little Tokyo. Those are all great developments. I asked somebody, another Latino grassroots leader recently, I said, the Chinese have the Chinese American Museum, the Japanese have the Japanese American National Museum, what about a Latino museum in LA? And he said, we don't need a museum, we're taking over the whole city. I don't think that's the right perspective. I think there should be a museum, and a National Latino Museum is hugely important, very promising.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, folk always wonder, why is there still the need for culturally specific museums?
Yeah.
It's because the stories are there and they need to be told. The memories need to be captured, and not everything filters into mainstream museology. There's still different ways in telling stories, and we need to continue to do that, however it's necessary.
We agree. And again, the Great Wall of Los Angeles and Spark Social and Public Art Resource Center, the digital mural project that Judy runs out of Spark and UCLA is an effort to do that.
Someone like Leo Limon and his Gatitas.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Have you interviewed him?
We have. He actually for the Reclaiming the Edge project.
Okay.
Created and sent us a a small scale,
Okay.
Yanga
Okay.
Gatita,
Uh-huh.
for the exhibition.
That's
So,
great. That's great.
Yeah.
And as you know, in the black community, the oral history of Thomas Jefferson's Children with Slaves was always part of the black oral history tradition, and the mainstream historical community rejected that until recently, when DNA evidence showed it was true. So what information gets privileged is part of the struggle itself. And as I said earlier, we have to prove what we all know is true. And documenting that and preserving a historical documentation. Our work has been made easier because by coincidence between 2000 when we started and now, the book on Black LA was published at UCLA. Another book called City Limits about the black community in Los Angeles, and a third book, which I'm blocking the name of. I'm blocking the name of it. But 3 books on Black LA were published in the last 10 years, which made it easier for us to document the history of discrimination in LA. And people ask us, why do you keep bringing up the history of discrimination? You're just playing the race card. It's divisive. It's confrontational. We do it in part because the United States Supreme Court has held that is how you prove discrimination. Now, when you're not going to find signs that say in a park, no blacks allowed, or whites only. One of the ways you prove discrimination is you document the history of discrimination.
Yeah.
And we have documented the history of discrimination in Los Angeles from 1850, when California joined the Union, to the present. And in part it's been through Judy Baca's work, through these books on Black LA. Here's a story that you will love. Around 2002 or 2003, we got a call from a man named Bernard Bruce. And he said, I called the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and they told me to talk to you because you do this kind of work. My family used to own a black beach resort.
What?
And I'd like to come in and talk to you. I said, okay. And that's what I said. I said, what? There's no black beach resort in LA.
Yeah.
And he came with a trunk full of stuff. And he was, I suspect, in his 70s or 80s. And he showed me the deed of trust, the court case, photographs, everything from Bruce's Beach. When Manhattan Beach was incorporated in the 1910s or 20s, for some reason they were very progressive and they decided to set aside some space for black folks, because in those days you couldn't go to the beach if you were black. And they said, well, black folks should have a place to go to the beach. And his family had a resort there. It was called Bruce's Beach. In the 1930s, as land prices were rising and more people were moving into Southern California, Manhattan Beach decided that was a real mistake. We should get that land back. And together with the KKK, they drove the black community out of Manhattan Beach.
Wow.
They condemned the land, took it with promises to create a park there. They didn't for 20 or 30 years. And then in the 1950s, somebody said, when we drove the black people out, we said we'd create a park there, and we didn't, and one of them might come back and take his land back. So they put in a little park. It's a nice park. But they called it after a sister city in Mexico. And so Bernard Bruce came and told me all this stuff. And we contacted Manhattan Beach. And, the bottom line, around 2005 or 2006 now, Manhattan Beach rededicated the park as Bruce's Beach. And they had Mr. Bruce speak there. And, he said, all of my life people have laughed at me when I told them that my family owned a beach. They told me black people didn't own beaches, and now nobody's laughing anymore. So that was a totally forgotten chapter in the history of LA. Completely forgotten. Except for Mr. Bruce making that phone call and bringing his files to us. And the LA Times did an editorial telling the true story of Bruce's Beach at Manhattan Beach, which still has not happened.
Yeah.
They have a plaque that says, it's named Bruce's Beach, and they have a plaque that says words like, this park is the legacy of a different era. So if you don't know what happened, that sign won't tell you. And if you do know what happened, that sign is not enough. But for Mr. Bruce, it was a real victory that people don't laugh at him anymore when they tell him.
And do you still have his box of files, or does his family still have them?
There is actually a historian who's been working on this. So I believe there's archives at the Sentinel or the Wave, which are the two historical black newspapers in LA. He wanted to keep his files, so we made copies of some of those things, including the photographs. We have them on our website, and Judy Baca and Spark actually did a poster for us, incorporating those images that we used at the celebration of rechristening the park as Bruce's Beach. So we have digital copies of some of the material. Yes.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's it's those kinds of stories that and those kinds of connections with different ethnic groups that just tell the story of a city's growth and development. We hate to lose all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it will get lost without you, because again, we're hugely proud of the work we've done on the LA River, and the work has been catapulted to the national level because America's Great Outdoors, the initiative, designated the LA River and the San Gabriel River as one of the top priority projects in the nation. And the report itself, the AGO report, America's Great Outdoors report, has a picture of the children playing at Rios de Los Angeles State Park, and they cite it as a best practice example of how to revitalize an urban river. But nowhere in the AGO report do you find the words African American or Latino. You find the word Asian once in discussing the Asian gypsy moth. And when you read the story of Rio de Los Angeles State Park, it nowhere says it was a community organizing effort and it required a lawsuit and it was an environmental justice issue. Those are, again, parts of the history of the people that are suppressed and marginalized. And so we're glad the LA River is an AGO project, but we will continue to fight to make sure that the full and fair story is told.
Is the river really now more accessible to all? Is the LA River recovering, and are all the people able to claim ownership of it, to say our people have a part of this, that our life, our story, our history contributes to the life and health and well-being of this urban resource?
The short answer is no. There's progress, but not enough progress and not fast enough. First of all, as I say, now that greening the LA River has become respectable, the story of how it got to be respectable is being forgotten. So the fact that litigation was necessary to start the process, kickstart the process of greening that river, is conveniently forgotten in official accounts. The groups responsible for making that happen, including the city project, are conveniently omitted from the official story or from events like the launching of the recreation zone and Marsh Street Park. The America's Great Outdoors campaign report leaves out the full story of the river. One. Two, I mentioned earlier what Mayor Bloomberg and the City of New York have been able to do in creating the 32-mile Manhattan waterfront greenway in the amount of time that Bloomberg has been mayor. When you look at that compared to what LA has done for the river in 13 years, it's astounding. How did New York City do that? It requires political will, it requires leadership, it requires funding, but they provided all that, including the funding, including during the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, in part from the recognition that money invested in revitalizing the Manhattan waterfront is money well invested because it creates economic opportunity, tourism, places for businesses, increased property taxes, and so on. Why isn't LA there? Why can't LA green 32 miles of the river in the same amount of time that New York City greened 32 miles of the waterfront? I mentioned earlier Madrid. 10 kilometers, 6 miles of ring road buried underground to create what is not just a world-class park, but is a park for the ages. I was an undergraduate at Stanford, but I studied in Spain in college. El Estanque del Retiro was a park created in the 16th century, and it's one of the great wonders of the world and continues to be a world-class park. I think Parque Madrid Rio will take its place in the pantheons of great historic parks, along with the Estanque del Retiro. How is it possible that Madrid, under a conservative city mayor and government, was able to restore the river, even 10 kilometers, 6 miles of it, so quickly, and LA hasn't? This weekend, this Sunday, by coincidence, is the annual LA River Ride. That's great, and I've been taking my sons on the LA River Ride for many years now. That's once a year. You have the LA River Ride. You can ride around the Manhattan Waterfront Greenway any day of the week, walk around it, skateboard around it, skate around it. Even the San Gabriel River, which is on the east side, further east, that is a beautiful, dedicated bike path along the San Gabriel River. That doesn't get the attention that the LA River does, because it is on the east side. That is the Latino part of LA. That's the disproportionate Latino, Asian parts of LA. So it doesn't get the attention that the LA River does, but they've done a much better job on greening the San Gabriel River than anybody's done on greening the LA River. So, what do we take from that? The struggle never ends. Nothing is easy. With Camus, we must imagine Sisyphus happy. And so we keep pushing that rock up the hill, and it rolls back down the hill, and we push it back up the hill again. And we'll keep pushing. That's what it takes. The struggle never ends.
Thank you so very much for sharing this time with us and for giving us a lot to think about and to contemplate, and for allowing other communities to draw good lessons from what you've been able to do here in Los Angeles. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Doing it is part of the struggle, but telling the story is just as important, because otherwise it will die with us here in LA. And as I mentioned earlier, to see in Reclaiming the Edge that you have the photographs from
Rio de los Angeles State Park, and the soccer players playing there, and specifically named the city project COFEM and Anahuac as part of that story. Not everybody is willing to tell that story, so thank you for telling the story. Thank you for preserving history. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
That's our life and our work, and we would be totally remiss if we didn't tell these stories and didn't share with a very, very broad and international public the work that's being done here in LA.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great work. Thank you.
Thank you.